But do you agree that we have found in psychology things that are quite in line with common sense? We just described at a more scientific level what everybody knows. But we have also discovered things that go against what we can say the SLAY or common sense knowledge. Don't you feel that it's more difficult to show to people those against common sense things?
Yeah. So again, psychology gets criticized in two ways. People say it's Bubba psychology. It's what your grandmother always told you. So it's nothing new. It's just dressed up nice. And the other thing is psychology, they say, is excusiology, that it makes excuses for behavior. He did this because of the situation and so forth. And I'm saying, you know, my grandmother was often wrong. And the problem is nobody would ever tell her, gee, Grandma, that's not the case. So some of psychology is about proving that common sense is sometimes right. But what psychology does, it tells us when is common sense sometimes wrong. You know, because a lot of like proverbs, the ways we talk about, are really in contradiction. You know, they say birds of a feather flock together. You know, so that, you know, that means people should be with people who are more similar. You know, on the other hand, you say familiarity breeds contempt. So there's the opposite. So which is true? Well, they're both true in different occasions, in different times. So again, psychological research helps us refine common sense to say this is when this idea is true, this is when this other idea is true.
But still it is more difficult to say to people, you are wrong, your common sense is not showing you the truth. Just one small example. Most people are persuaded that monozygotic twins reared together are very similar. We know from psychological or behavioral genetics that monozygotic twins reared together are less similar than as compared with monozygotic twins reared apart. How to convince people that we, in our scientific research, are right?
Well, step number one is you have to get them to read the research, or, you know, the average person does not have access to the journals. But what a textbook does is to say, you know, I want to gain your trust that I will do the background research. I will pull together everything we know about genes, everything we know about schizophrenia, and I will do the work for you to put it in one place, and then enable you to make a decision to say, here's all the research that shows A, here's the research that shows B, and in general, we think the conclusion is some combination, some blend. You know, it used to be in the past, the idea was that when you get a certain age, your intelligence is fixed. It can't get any better. Now we understand that that's not true, is that in the past, you got to be a certain age, you stopped reading, you stop being stimulated. Now, with television, with the internet, and now that life goes on to 85, 90 years old, we show that elderly people exercise wisdom. Elderly people have new ways of dealing with information that we never thought about before. So what's exciting about psychology, it's constantly changing with new techniques, with new methods.
But also returning back to some old concepts. You said wisdom.
Yeah.
For many years, psychology was not eager to accept this will incurs terms or wisdom, like Sternberg likes it. Now we are returning to those more traditional concepts that are, I think, better understood by the large public. Don't you think that it's a good thing for psychology?
Yeah, see, in general, there was a period when psychology wanted to be unique as a science. They want to be different than philosophy. Philosophers talk about ideas. We take ideas and demonstrate them. Are they true or not in experiments, in research of different kinds? But I think now psychologists more and more are saying, we don't need the fancy terms. We don't need the fancy jargon. Really, we want to talk in the language of the people. So when I did research on social phobia, I called it shyness. The average person, whatever the word is in different languages, it understands what shyness is. Social phobia, social anxiety, that's a technical term. So I always try in my writing and my teaching to use the simplest concepts that most people understand. And then you say in parentheses, some people call it social phobia or social anxiety. Here, in fact, here's how slight differences in it. On the one hand, you say, well, if maybe people think, well, there's nothing new. I mean, I knew what shyness is. I know what wisdom is. I know. You say, well, you know at one level, but now we're going to show you there's a deeper level of understanding. What it means to be educated is to understand something, not only at the obvious level, but at the deeper level.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And when you said that you've done some research about shyness, that's one thing that always fascinating me. Are you more, what is more in your nature? To look at the great picture, at the forest, like in psychology and life, or core concepts, or go deeper in one idea or one concept, like with shyness or aggression or time? What is more close to what you are?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I like to be both. I mean, so in one sense, it's two different kind of knowledge. One is vertical and one is horizontal.
Yeah, that's...
So in general, European scholars have what I think of as a horizontal approach. That is, each idea they link to another idea. So if I'm interested in emotion, I want to know, what did Sartre say about emotion? What did Husserl say about emotion? Did Kant say anything? So essentially, I explore all of the links this way. In general, what American psychologists, their approach is more vertical. I have an idea, I say, what does it lead to? Not what is it associated with. I do an experiment, I say, what's the next experiment that this should lead to? So one approach is to go deeper and deeper into a narrow phenomena. The other approach, which is in general more European, is more philosophical, more like a good journalist essay. What is it connected to? What is the connection across culture, across
the
ideas?
web?
Yeah.
A kind of web.
It's a kind of web. So it's really more a two-dimensional web rather than a three-dimensional web.
Yeah.
And so I taught summer school in 1966 in Belgium, in Leuven. And my students were European graduate students from around Europe. And there were 4 American professors, 4 European professors. We each had European graduate students. And it was eye-opening. My students were from Poland, from Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, from Amsterdam, from France, I forget where else, many different countries. And the whole idea was when we would talk about a concept, they would talk about, each one would make a link this way. And then I'd say, well, now we want to do an experiment. How can you do an experiment? Because now they want to bring in philosophy and anthropology and culture and history and law. And you say, no. In order to do an experiment, you have to narrow the world down and say, imagine the world consists of only 2 things, a cause and a possible effect. And we're going to study, does this cause produce this effect? Now we know there are all these other we know there's the web, but at any one time, in any one study, we have to narrow down to look at this. And so for them, it was eye-opening. In fact, we did, in one summer, we did original experiment in our group.